I believe in the Constitution. I believe that one case, the right case, can change the world. If you believe this too, Freedom Counsel is for you. Pursuing a major case can be overwhelming, but we provide a community of practice so that you have the resources available to support your case. My name is Warner Mendenhall, and we are Freedom Counsel. Join Freedom Counsel today. freedomcounsel.org.
With Broken Truth and Freedom Counsel, I am John Davidson. Warner Mendenhall is out today. As you guys know, one of the areas I like to focus on are family and children's service cases where children are medically abducted with wrong evidence, uncertain evidence, and families deal with an incredible uphill battle to get their kids back. We've covered cases in Norway, we've covered cases all across the country, and one of the biggest cases is for a family, Tasha Patterson in Florida, who actually just got a law pushed through the state called Patterson's Law, which is about her incredible story of her two twin babies taken from her by the state of Florida. And so, fortunately, today we have Tasha here with her attorney, and let me just get them on here. Welcome, ladies. So who can kind of explain to me this case? By the way, this is Valentina Villalobos and Tasha Patterson. And Tasha is also, I want to add, a nurse practitioner, which means she is very experienced at understanding medical issues. So welcome, ladies. Who can kind of give me a quick summary of the case and where it stands right now?
I probably should as the
okay.
So Tasha and Michael's rights were terminated, and there's been a number of appeals going on since that time. And her latest appeal to the Florida Supreme Court was recently denied. And so at the moment, there's really no other appeals to be had that we plan to file, and adoption is scheduled to happen at the end of the week.
So at the end of the week?
Things will be final. Right, Tasha?
Yes.
Wait, this week?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. This week.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So
yeah.
This is in Miami County, correct?
Broward County.
Broward County. Sorry, I keep saying that. So
neighbors,
Broward
though.
County, who is the judge in this case? Sorry, can I ask who the judge is in this case?
You can. It's Stacy Schulman, I'll say.
Okay. So has this been the judge overseeing the entire case from the beginning?
Yes.
Now, can we kind of just step back and go into the history of the case so that we can catch people up? Tasha, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I can give a synopsis. My twins were born 34 weeks, 6 days by C-section. I had several complications during my pregnancy, including preeclampsia. I believe that led me to having decreased amniotic fluid called oligohydramnios, and they couldn't, I guess, support the fluid volume that I was losing, and I ended up having to have a C-section earlier than expected. When they were born, they spent some time in the NICU. One twin spent 24 hours, the other twin spent 2 weeks. The first twin that spent 24 hours was then transferred to the nursery and then eventually home with me. And then the other twin stayed in the NICU because he had breathing issues. So essentially, when they were discharged, they were only home with us for about 6 to 7 weeks in total. During those 6 to 7 weeks, we noticed that they were fussy. We didn't know why they were fussy. I wasn't sure what was going on. They had a lot of doctor's appointments, more appointments than the weeks that they were home with us. And if there was an appointment for one twin, the other twin was always there. I just always took both of them together. So about maybe 8 to 10 in total, including 2 ER visits. And so I was always told it was either colic or reflux, which was causing their fussiness. And that I just needed to put them on, put them on an antacid, Pepsid, add rice cereal to their formula, those sorts of things. But they were still having a hard time. That last ER visit was with one twin. I had taken the other twin the week prior. And the backstory is that the week prior, I had taken one of the twins to the emergency room for fussiness, not responding to the medication. And the ER doctor told me that he probably just needed time to get used to the medication, and that he's fine. And if his twin is exhibiting anything similar, I can always bring his twin in. A week and a half later, I brought the twin in, because then the other twin was having symptoms, or more symptoms that aligned with his brother. One was always more fussy than the other. We never knew why. So then I took the second one. When I took him, we were taking him, you know how they have those Velcro swaddles and then it wraps around to
Yeah.
okay. He was in one of those Velcro swaddles. And so we're getting ready to take him to the emergency room. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, I don't even remember. And when we take him out the swaddle and changing his pamper and lifting up the onesie, we noticed he had like a pressure mark on his left side. We didn't know exactly where it came from. It was never there, but the assumption was it had to be the Velcro swaddle. It was on the left side where the strap connected. Didn't think anything of it, put on his clothes, took him to the emergency room. We get to the emergency room. It's the same ER doctor from the week and a half before for the other twin. Then he sees the same ER doctor, and I said, "Oh, it's me again. I'm bringing his brother for the same thing I brought the other one for last week." She goes, "Okay." She starts assessing him, and when she lifts up the onesie, I told her he has this mark here. I think it may have come from the Velcro swaddle, because that line came up on the side, and then while there, 2 other pressure marks came around the arms, right where the swaddle went around. So I told her I thought it was from the straps, but didn't think anything of it. She immediately then said, "We have to do a child abuse workup." And I said, "Why?" And then she goes, "Well, we just have to make sure." And I said, "That's fine. Do what you have to do. But I just brought his brother here last week." Fine. Then they started doing images on him. And then I find out that he has injuries. And then I'm being questioned about, where did it come from? I don't know. I brought my baby for fussiness. I just so happened to see a pressure mark after taking out of the Velcro swaddle. I don't know what happened. Anyways, they then have us taken to the main children's hospital by ambulance, and the second twin is then brought in. They end up doing images of the second twin, who was just there a week and a half before, and he has fractures from head to toe. Don't know where it came from. Yeah, we don't know where it came from. So then immediately, DCF case is filed, the children are removed, the police are called, law enforcement is involved, criminal investigations opened, everything you can think of happened. They ended up having a shelter hearing, and a family member then got custody of my twins. Now, there was a third child in the home who is my stepson. He was 8 at the time, but he was questioned, and he explained to them there was never any violence in our home. Nothing bad ever happened. He even testified in court saying nothing bad happened, wanting to come home, but they disregarded him. But that's later for the story. And anyways, the kids end up with a relative, and our oldest, which is my stepson, went to his biological mother, who was in another city in Florida. And then the uphill battle went from there. This was September 2022. That's when this started, just to give you a timeline. So now the children are with a relative. We have supervised visitation. So we have supervised visitation, and in supervised visitation, we're separate, but we're allowed to see the kids separately only. Then next thing you know, the relative is also experiencing where my kids are being fussy. Not just now with me, but now with them. Really fussy. I don't understand. Giving them, a little Pepsid and all of these things, and you're not sure what's going on. takes them to the emergency room, and they keep them for a little bit. And then they said something about they had Sanderford syndrome, which is a very severe form of reflux. Okay. Sent them home. They finally changed their formula. This is when they changed their formula to make sure that they can tolerate what they're eating and everything. Then the fussiness continued. And don't know why they're still fussy. I get a phone call now from a relative. I think I was in the parking lot of, I don't know. I was in the parking lot by Target, I think. I can't remember. But I'm sitting in the parking lot. That's when I got the phone call in my car that the kids are fussy. They're going back. Okay. Go back to the emergency room. And the ER doctor is then talking to us and is saying, we know they have fractures. They're being worked up. We can send them home. Then she asked me, Mom, what do you prefer? I said, I prefer that you figure out what's wrong with them because this is ongoing. It doesn't make sense. Then I wasn't there, like in the actual, like holding the baby. But apparently what happened, because my relative told the story in court, is that he was holding the baby, like, babies are against your chest and the baby pushes against the chest. What happened is that I guess he heard like a pop or saw some deformity, something happened. They ended up doing x-rays and they had new fractures, including a fracture in the exact same spot where he heard the pop or saw like that deformity thing. I didn't witness this. I didn't see it. I was not necessarily in the room. He was the one holding the baby. Anyways, he's holding the baby and that's what happens. They do x-rays and they find a fracture there. The next morning is when we find out that there were new fractures, because then that's when the pediatrician comes in and says, there's new fractures. And the relative asks, well, where was it? Is it here in the arm? He said, how'd you know? I said, well, last night in the emergency room, I was holding him and this is what happened when I was holding him. Then they're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And this is how we discovered they continued fracturing after removal. They said that we must have been somehow hurting the children under supervised visitation. That's what their story was. It makes absolutely no sense. Anyways, they try to take the children from now this relative, saying that it was inappropriate supervision. I don't know. I don't even know. It's stupid. And he testifies. This is a different judge. He speaks as to what happened. This is the story. And the judge says, and then he also testifies to the fact that we were never left alone with the kids. He went into great detail on how much he actually was always present, supervising, and he even took a month off of work to be there that first month when they were out of work, when they were out of the hospital and when everything happened. And so the judge, who was a different judge at the time, said, okay, you know what? I don't have any issues with your supervision. I'm not pulling the kids. Well, thank God the kids stayed, and it currently is with this relative. And so they ended up not removing the kids, but the only thing that the judge said was, well, supervising for a long period of hours can be tiring. We can adjust the times, but that's it. Just the times of when they come to visit, and that's it. That was the end of the hearing. We thought, okay, maybe, just maybe, they would realize something is wrong. No, that's not what happened. They took us to termination of parental rights trial. They said that they still kept the same story despite everything the relative put forth. Like, he witnessed it, he saw it. And obviously, if a baby pushes against your chest and you see the wrist or whatever becomes deformed, that means something's wrong. Take it a step further, the baby didn't cry. And so that's a problem. Something is wrong. My baby just fractured his arm or whatever you want to say. The deformity or the pop was seen and heard, and he didn't even cry. Why is he getting used to this happening with his bones? common medical sense would say, oh no, something's not right. Absolutely not. That's not what happened. Took us to trial. They terminated our rights in 2023. Then shortly thereafter, I ended up hearing about this doctor named Michael Hollick, who's in Boston. And so I contacted him. He was willing to see me and evaluate me. And he evaluated me and had concerns that I had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Now, to step back a little bit, it was already a concern that I had a connective tissue disorder before my children started having injuries, or before it was discovered they started having injuries. And I was in the process of being referred to a geneticist at the same time the injuries were found. And so this was something that was a concern with my own health prior to even discovering my children were having issues as well. So now fast forward, I go see Dr. Hollick. He's concerned about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Shortly thereafter, my original attorney, no longer my attorney, I hired Valentina now, who is my attorney, and her co-counsel, Octavia Brown. And so they jumped in, post immediate termination, find out that, hey, we might have this genetic issue going on, and they get the case reopened. But then when they get the case reopened, it's limited. We can't bring in everything. We can't bring in everyone. So first it was Dr. Hollick. Then we had Dr. Marvin Miller, where Dr. Marvin Miller then reviewed the images with Dr. David Ayu, and then found that there was bone fragility noted in the images. Well, how did this get missed? Well, in review of the medical records, it was found that there was a radiologist from one of the hospitals who was concerned about low bone fragility or decreased bone
Density.
mineralization. Yeah. It was in a report, an x-ray report. However, when that x-ray was taken, when the repeated fractures were found in the third hospitalization, and what ended up happening was that the original accusing doctor, who is based in Broward County, goes to the other hospital in Miami-Dade County. We're in a different county. And the day she shows up, that time frame, reports started changing. And then we see that this report that had concerns of decreased bone mineralization is then changed to, no, it wasn't. It was just bad technique. Dr. Marvin Miller pointed that out in his review of the records. There were amendments to images, especially that one with the repeated fractures. Okay, continue on the story. Then we get Dr. Anthony Perzik involved. He's a geneticist in the state of Florida, frequently consulted for the child protection teams for this reason. He also renders an opinion, and everything I say is on paper, by the way. He renders an opinion and says, this is not abuse. This is a medical condition. The original allegations were wrong. Didn't matter. Then we got Dr. Eli Newberger, right? Everybody knows him, the father of child abuse pediatrics. He was the founder of the child protection team in Boston Children's Hospital. And so he reviews the case. Actually, it took him a while. He renders an opinion. Not only is this a medical case, but the accusing doctor violated the standards of child abuse pediatrics, right? It's on paper. Everything I say is on paper. And so then now, Valentina goes and takes the deposition of said doctor, who said, I don't know about the medical conditions 113 times, because she counted it. She counted it 113 times. Next thing you know, fast forward, initially this doctor was listed as a witness for this reopen. Doctor is pulled as a witness. All of a sudden, she's no longer a part of the child protection team, yet it's her diagnosis that I'm still fighting against. For whatever reason, it still stands, even though she just disappeared off the face of the earth. So then, when it was time to go to the trial reopening, the issue was that we couldn't present everything. We couldn't bring everything in. We were limited to Dr. Hollick and Dr. Miller. And then the state brought then their own specialists that they wanted to bring in. Our doctor said, yes, this caused it. Their doctor said, no, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't, but we're not sure. It could, but no, it doesn't. Essentially, it was like a type of answer. I walked out of that trial, at least I can say we all did, thinking that our kids are coming home. Cleaned our house. Valentina can attest to this. I told her I was cleaning my house. I was setting everything up for the kids to come home. I was putting, new clothes away from them. And then 2 weeks later, Valentina calls me at night. We lost again. How? I don't know. Apparently, it was their doctor was believed over all of our doctors. Keep in mind, at that point, we then had Dr. Hollick, Dr. Miller, Dr. Perzik, Dr. Newberger, and Dr. Ayub. At that point, we had 5 doctors. Only 2 testified, and Perzik only testified in a special Daubert hearing because they were trying to challenge Dr. Hollick and Miller's credibility. But we actually won that hearing, saying that they were credible. Okay. And then at that point, it was then appeal after appeal after appeal. Valentina handled most of the appeals. The appeal of determination of parental rights, very, very big court record. She wrote like an 80-page brief, denied within a week of her response. There's no way you can go through all of those court records and all of those medical records and just deny a week later. But we received the denial a week later. There was a per curiam affirmance, which means no explanation, just denied. Now, in between all of that, because we did a lot of overlap stuff, because we were still digging into what happened and what was going on with the kids. Like, yes, we had a diagnosis, but we were still digging. We ended up getting the injuries dated. And then we saw many of these injuries dated to birth, in utero, while in the ICU. And then, yes, there were fractures after removal, but then there was another fracture after that arm incident, and another twin. There was a clavicle fracture that dated to the week he was already in the hospital, not in my care, not in the relative's house, in a hospital bed. And we are always supervised by somebody or hospital staff. No one ever saw anything because no one ever did anything. But yet these kids keep developing these injuries. Obviously, there's some sort of medical fragility. We present this, while this first appeal is going on, we present this dating of the injuries that we found out. And not just the dating of the injuries, the same demineralized bone that was found the first time, but later amended. In fact, one of my twins actually had like a hole in the skull found on the CT scan.
My gosh.
Yeah, because the bone was not fully connected. And these were images I didn't see because I don't know how to read images. So I didn't look at the images, but they did. And he actually pointed out where here the bone didn't even fully connect, where they had defects in the skull or what's called ossification defects, indicative of some sort of bone fragility, bone issues, those sorts of things. And then, because one of the twins had a brain bleed, that would have also then contributed to why the brain bleed would have happened, because it wasn't dated to something that was new. When the doctors looked at it, it actually was more aligned with the birth, because one of the OB experts who looked at it determined that because I was in labor at the time of the C-section, that could have caused or would have caused his brain bleed, especially with his positioning. He later expounded that in the report. But now, anyways, we present this information and it's denied. We don't get a hearing. It's denied. Why is it denied? Because it's a reinterpretation of new evidence, which is not new evidence. It's just a reinterpretation. Okay. So then shortly thereafter, in the midst of all of this, we're actually repeating genetic testing because my genetics doctor was concerned. Repeated genetic testing, and then the twins had whole genome sequencing also, which they never had done before. Then they find this variant in this gene called FN1, involving fibronectin. Fibronectin is big when it comes to collagen because collagen affects bone, cartilage, muscles, tissues, blood vessels, everything, right? Okay, that's why people take collagen supplements, because it's to help with all of those things. And so, okay, that's a big deal, but we don't really know much about it. We know it's connected to like maybe a bone issue, but we don't know much. But with the little bit we know, we're going to put it forth. File another motion. Denied. Denied because the significance of it is unknown. So denied. Valentina then takes this up on appeal again. This is why we've literally been in this case for all these years. Takes it up on appeal again. The appeals court then renders an opinion, this time not denied just flat off the bat, and she can go into more of the legal terms, but essentially agreed. Yeah, I mean, it's exonerating, dating the injuries back, but it's just a reinterpretation. It's not new evidence. So it's a reinterpretation, not new evidence. Sorry, can't bring it in. Regarding the genetic mutation, well, yeah, it's uncertain. And even if it was, I don't know, not certain enough, denied. That is my interpretation of the opinion. Oh, and hey, Mom, sorry you lost your job as a nurse practitioner in a major South Florida hospital, but that doesn't excuse the fact that you should have found out sooner. I lacked due diligence. That's what they said. Even though it was their fault that I lost my job.
And
because they put my story on the news and then my job fired me.
Oh, so did you work at the hospital that you took your children to?
I worked in an adult setting.
And so you lost your job because you spoke publicly about something that might have impugned the integrity of hospitals?
I lost my job because of the allegations that was provided to my job. Someone informed my job, I don't know who. I was told that they put my mugshot on the news. I didn't see the actual news release. That my
so you were arrested too?
Oh yeah, they arrested me. I was actually, I was followed from my home and arrested in the middle of the street.
Were you brought up on criminal charges and prosecuted in front of a trial?
No, I mean charges, yes, but prosecuted in the trial, no.
So what happened with that case?
It hasn't gone there. It's been pending.
Oh my gosh. Valentina, do you want to weigh in here and just kind of fill in the blanks on the legal side of this?
Yeah, I mean, she's explained it, pretty good. Just the logistics of it is TPR has been granted, appeals have been exhausted, like there's nothing really left to appeal, and so the department wants to finalize the adoption and get rid of us. So that's where we're at right now.
So in terms of adjacent cases, this looks like grounds for failure to diagnose.
Right. Well, child protection teams, hospitals, state hospitals, public ones that are nonprofits, they have a ton of immunity. So essentially, if she wanted recourse there, it's not that likely because of their immunities. So it's okay for them to separate families wrongfully and make terrible diagnoses, and there is no recourse.
But I guess my point is you have an ignored radiology scan very early on that could have illuminated and helped provide an accurate diagnosis. Failure to diagnose is a major concern of liability for hospitals and medical doctors. It's motivation for that doctor to want to change records to cover her derriere.
No, I don't think it is because of their immunity. It's better to just dig their heels in and double down because there will be no repercussions.
So you mean immunity from a criminal prosecution?
No, not from criminal, no, but like civil side. There's a lot of immunities built in the statute specifically about the child protection team, CPT, and then just in general for these institutions that are, like I said, nonprofits or university hospitals or whatever, they get a lot of immunity. So, it's going to be difficult to get recourse, and it would be hard to find an attorney that's going to take that on.
So your next case is coming up. What date is that?
Well,
there's still not a case. They're finalizing the adoption.
There's more to the story, though. If you want me to finish the story, yeah.
Please do.
The story didn't even end there. Anyways, yes, that was denied. All the appeals were denied, and then we attempted to then take it up to the Supreme Court under habeas corpus. That's the most recent thing. We attempted to take it up through habeas corpus, on showing that now the former CPT of our county has now come forward, reviewed the records, and said, "Hey, you guys need to reconsider, and return the children." We tried to present it, they didn't look at it. We also presented that the twins now, they have their own treating geneticist for the issues. The treating geneticist then writes a separate report regarding their genetic issues, right? And explains that in the report, long story short, that these injuries were not due to non-accidental trauma or abuse in nature or any of those things. This is due to an underlying genetic and connective tissue disorder. And this is the doctor that's taking care of them who provides this report to my attorneys, a separate report from their medical records. And even then, this was presented on habeas corpus. And within 2 days of presenting it, we then got denied or declined as far as them not taking jurisdiction of the case. No reason.
So your kids are receiving injuries. It turns out that they have a condition. The kids are taken before you find out about the condition. And now they're saying it doesn't matter that there's a condition, but also we're going to treat them for the condition.
Well, right. And so it doesn't matter that they have the condition. Yeah, we know they got a treating doctor, but it doesn't matter. Apparently, finality supersedes the truth. And they know if there was a reunification, there wouldn't be any harm because we still have approved supervised visitation. So my kids know who I am. It's not that they never saw me again. They know who I am. On top of that, we even get, there's legislation passed where parents are entitled to a second opinion. And even with the legislation passing, it's almost, I understand there's a separation of powers and it's a prospective bill, but at the same time, it's like, don't you have a conscience to do the right thing? Where is your conscience in doing the right thing? Or is the focus on control?
So I'll just quickly kind of reference this. Patterson's Law is named after your family, and it allows families to get a second opinion for being charged with a DCF-related crime. What is the status on the case? Do you think it's going to pass? I'm sorry, on the law.
On the bill, I mean, I don't see, it's already passed. It passed both the Senate and the House. It just has to be signed by the governor. I don't know of any issues that's coming with it. It's just that it's not taking effect until July 1st. So there's really no, I guess you could say, urgency in signing it right now.
Now, has DeSantis indicated that he would sign it?
With them. But to my knowledge, I don't know that he's opposed. I don't know anything about him being opposed to it. I never had that conversation with anyone. Yeah, from what I know, it's supposed to be signed. I haven't heard anything against it.
Yeah, my understanding is that DeSantis is concerned that his legacy may be tarnished by some of these outrageous DCF cases that have occurred under his watch. So hopefully that will result in some forward progress on this. We proposed Kinley's Law based on what the situation with Joy Zaroff. No one's wanted to talk to me about it, possibly because part of the law is that they take away qualified immunity from judges when they allow DCF and doctors to provide false information to the court and do not refer them to prosecution for perjury charges and fraud upon the court. Florida definitely seems to have, and this isn't, those two cases aren't the only ones. Lee Dundas and another attorney fought a huge battle against a DCF case last year that I was helping her with. There seems to be a big money machine that gets abducted children into the DCF system because they get HHS funds from Title IV-E, but only when they take the child from the home. So you've incentivized something. And I don't want to get too deep in the legal world because I'm not an attorney or a politician, but at least you did get a law, and it seems like that should exert pressure on the judiciary to at least acknowledge what's going on. But it seems like these judges just don't care.
Anything we have filed since the reopened trial that we got, it's just what I refer to as being rubber stamp denied. No hearing on it. No, let me put the evidence before you, judge, and explain what's happening. Just denied, and then we take it up on appeal. So
yeah, we've never been able, all of this information with the dating of the injuries, the information where with the genetic testing that we just had that we had redone after the fact, we've never been able to put that forward. I mean, it's exonerating, yes, but we haven't been able to. And doctors have been writing letters and reports that you're talking about the former child abuse pediatrician for the same county that I'm in saying, hey, look, please reconsider. And it's just no one's paying attention. Well, I take it back. We're paying attention, but we're just going to ignore it. And then it goes back to, sorry.
Can I ask what the name of the doctor that changed records or amended records?
So it really, I don't have it. I don't even remember. It was a radiologist.
Yeah, it was a hospital radiologist.
And he had made a note like, hey, there might be an issue here. And then there's an addendum later. Oh, changed my mind. I mean, that is just, it's significant, but it's one small piece of a giant picture, right? What you can assume is someone put a little pressure on him to change his opinion. And actually, I don't even remember, but to be honest, he's like the least of our concern in a lot of this. He's just one small.
Right.
So I don't really bash this guy that had a very small role, and he doesn't work for CPT. They consult their like in-house doctors at the hospital. Hey, look at this. Oh, I don't really like your finding. Maybe you should change that,
And what hospital system was that?
The only coincidence I can say is that I know that this particular doctor showed up to this hospital around the same time, and it was out of county. They had their own county CPT doctor to see the kids, and the county CPT did not get involved, did not examine the kids, did not write a report. She came and did that, and then that's when we saw the amendment to that radiology record. As far as the
to answer your question, the hospital was Joe DiMaggio, and something we uncovered is that our judge, through a nonprofit that she's in, actually made pretty substantial donations to that hospital and did not disclose that. And when we raised it as a reason she might want to consider recusing herself, that was another rubber stamp denial. We also found out she donated to the lead agency too. Another rubber stamp denial when we raised that issue. Wow. So the lead agency is most crazy to me because they're in front of her every day, literally every day. I don't know that you should be sitting in that dependency seat if you're making those donations. Maybe good intentions there, right? But it's
a bias.
But you have a right to, the parents had a right to know that from day one about both sets of donations and decide if they wanted to seek recusal. But they weren't informed.
So this next hearing, in the next few days, what happens after that? If you lose?
The law says you only have up to a year to undo an adoption, and you're not going to find any cases in the case law in Florida of someone actually undoing one that was brought up on appeal anyways. I'm sure it's probably happened, but I've researched this issue before for her case and related ones, and that 1 year is very hard to overcome. We do have some other ideas, but I'm going to keep them close to my chest for now to see what happens.
Understood.
But yeah, that's generally speaking, you have 1 year after adoption.
So is your 8-year-old up for adoption as well?
No, so the 8-year-old is not my biological, it's my stepson. Okay. He's 12 now, so he's with his biological mother. But even throughout the entire proceedings, she voiced that she did not believe that this was abuse, that she believed something else was going on, and she was against the termination the entire time.
I mean, that's something, right, for your ex-wife to defend you.
The ex-wife did support that this should not be happening.
Yeah, many of the ex-wives I've heard about, I would not have expected that.
It says something.
The only resistance we've gotten is the system.
Yeah.
Well, I want to give people, as we're getting close to an hour, I want to give people a way to support you. So, a couple of quick things I'm going to pop up. Here is, if anyone wants to know more more about the condition, it is, I don't want to get it incorrect here. It's EDS is the short name for it. And, well, I don't know where my browser tab for it went, but
Ehlers-Danlos, if that helps.
I had to sneeze. And then we also want to send people, you don't have a exact website, but what you do have, let's see if I can get this bad boy hidden there. Let's get youarethepower.net/Patterson.
Yeah.
And if you go there, you will see a lot of the details on this case that we didn't cover today, because obviously this was sort of a top line interview, but it'll give you more information, and you can also find out how to donate to help their legal fund and whatnot, because one of the things we've noticed repeatedly is that you are highly outgunned against a system that is uninterested in hearing your case. Oh, sorry, I can't hear you.
No, I said, yeah, I agree.
Oh, okay.
John, I'm sure
so-
you know, I mean, Tasha's case is obviously egregious and like that, but it's not an isolated problem. I just
No.
want to throw that out there.
That was one of the things that when we started working on Joy's case, was discovering, Facebook groups filled with tens of thousands of people, all desperate just to get a fair shake. Yeah. And to that end, one of the concepts of Kenley's Law was that half of the Title IV-E money that HHS gives for abducted children by the state, half of that money should go to a legal defense fund for the families, and not go to the DCF. So suddenly now we're giving ammo to the families that really want to fight for their kids. Now, I would say in the situations where families, really they do need some intervention. Let's say there's a drug situation or whatever. I would say probably those families would not have the impetus to pursue that funding. Do you know what I mean? But in the cases where you have a parent that is being mistreated by the system, funding like that would be invaluable, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's worth saying, like Tasha and any other client I've gotten in a situation, no prior DCF record, no criminal record. Like, it can happen to anyone, and your world can come colliding down in an instant because you sought medical care for your child.
Right, and you think, being a nurse practitioner, you're part of the system. You understand how it works. Probably you had no idea that this would.
The way my first attorney, before I hired Valentina, explained it, she said, "Oh, they just believe you're a master manipulator." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "A master manipulator?" And she said, "Yes." And I'm like, "No, this is common medical sense. What are you talking about?" And yeah, that's what's been going on.
We saw that with Joy's case when they had a person that never met her diagnose her with Munchausen's. Never looked at a record, anything, but started firing. I consider that firing nuclear bombs in the legal world. So
I've seen that CPT doctors, not psychologists, diagnose Munchausen. It's crazy.
No offense, it was actually, I believe, a nurse practitioner that never met Joy that diagnosed her with Munchausen. And once you get it on the record, it becomes the Bible according to the case. It's very difficult to get through it. So I'm terribly sorry for what you're going through, Tasha. This is a nightmare that no one should have to endure, especially when the facts exonerated you. But so often we are reminded that this is a legal system, not a system for justice. So thank you both for your time. Is there anything else you would like to add?
I think one thing that maybe people don't understand when they hear Tasha's story is that she never got to testify. Her and Michael never got to testify in their defense because their first attorney advised them, you have criminal charges, you should take the fifth. And in civil cases, when you take the fifth, unlike criminal, the judge is allowed to assume the worst based on your non-answer. So that also really hurt them. And I think it probably stuck with the judge from the outset. If Tasha was asked point blank, did you abuse your children? And she takes the fifth because she's got criminal charges, the judge is allowed to assume in civil her non-answer means yes. And she commented in her order that she did make those assertions. So that's a problem we have in Florida. I don't know how it looks in other states, but you don't get the same protections you get for a criminal case in civil, yet I think most people would tell you they'd rather go to jail than lose their kids. So
Yeah, and I've made that remark before too when I found out an adoption date was set. Yes, they're with my family and it'll be my family. That's where they're with, not strangers or anything like that. But I said, this is harder than jail because these are my kids. I could give a crap about those criminal charges. These are my kids, and my kids cry for me when I leave. When I close the door, and I can hear them on the other side of the door, even though I'm outside, and I want Mommy Tasha, and that's what they call me because they learned my first name, Mommy Tasha. And it's wrong. It's wrong. I shouldn't have to sit there and console my baby and tell him, I'm going to come back because he doesn't know why I have to leave.
Are they
So
able to
wrong.
get are they getting treatment for the condition? Do they have better bone?
They have they have a doctor taking care of them. Yeah, they have their own geneticist. I have my geneticist and they have their geneticist. So they have someone that they're seeing to take care of them.
It is a treatable condition.
It'll affect them for life. There will be issues, but what I've learned in handling these cases from numerous doctors is the bulk of the bone fragility issues are going to level out around 6 months. They're going to start to be much more okay. I mean, they're still more susceptible, but I think Tasha, was it your dad that had heart issues that are probably related to this?
Yeah, so
all sorts of things.
Through the genetic testing, we found out that likely this is, the genetic issues that we have would have contributed to my father's death. He had unexplained heart failure. We didn't know where the heart failure came from because all his tests would be normal, but he developed heart failure and it was actually what killed him. And the only reason why we know this was inherited is because when my mother, but myself and my brother the same thing, and now my kids. And I'm sorry,
Well, you're breaking up
when my baby cries and I have to talk about my baby crying, it's hard.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you both for taking the time to do this interview. Hopefully, people that can help get this right will be watching. And I'm sure everyone will be praying for you. And thank you for sticking it out. And Valentina, thank you for representing clients like this. It takes a certain kind of attorney to be willing to walk into a lion's den like this.
Well, thank you for shedding light on it. It's really important. And, obviously we want Tasha to get her kids back more than anything, but we also want this to stop happening to people in general. It's a terrible thing. So.
All right. Well, with that, this is Broken Truth. I'm John Davidson, and Freedom Counsel is at freedomcounsel.org if you'd like to join. If you're an attorney, they are attorneys helping attorneys fight cases that scare off the big guys. All right. Thank you both, and we'll have a great day.
Thank you.
Freedom Counsel is nothing without all of you. How do we go about getting people held criminally responsible for their acts? The military is still at risk. Election interference, the medicalization of childhood. These drug dealers like Pfizer and Moderna, we can seize their property. We develop our litigation through conferences like this. It's going to come through communications. It's going to come through conversations. And Freedom Counsel is that conversation.
For information, visit freedomcounsel.org.